Larry Kudlow Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Hello, folks. This is the Larry Kudlow Show, and it's great to be with you. And we've got some fabulous news on the stock market that we'll get to in a minute. By the way, you can hear this show live streaming on the Internet. Live stream us on the Internet. If that's easier for you. LarryKudlowShow.com. LarryKudlowShow.com. Hear us all across the country, around the world, throughout the solar system, including the Milky Way. And please, during the week, join us. Welcome. Join us. Fabulous Fox Business Network. 4 to 5 p.m. every day. The name of the show is Kudlow. 4 to 5 p.m. every day. And if for some reason you can't make it at 4, why? Just text your favorite 9-year-old. That's all. She'll show you how to DVR the show. You'll never miss a thing, including yesterday's 1,200-point gain in the Dow Jones. Stocks up 2-3% across the board in all the major indexes. Really quite amazing. It's going to be Dow 50,000 prosperity rocket ship. That's what it was, a rocket ship. And took a lot of people by surprise because we'd been in the throes of a tech correction, especially the software stocks. And we'll talk about that with our experts later in the program. But I'll tell you, I've been around a while. I haven't seen one like this. 1,200 points in one day. 50,000 Dow. 50,000 Dow. When I went from graduate school to the Federal Reserve Bank of New York in, wait for it, 1973. My first job. I was in their JETS program, whatever, advanced promotions or something. Anyway, from Princeton to the New York Fed, 1973. That was a period when the Dow Jones was hovering around 1,000 or less, 750, 800. That's when I started. Went to Wall Street. Finally, a couple years, 3-4 years later, I went to Payne Webber, the old Payne Webber, Jackson and Curtis, and as their economist. And then I went to Bear Stearns. Of course, those firms are all lost to us. But the point I want to make is that for really 15 years or more, way back when, the Dow fluttered around 1,000. It never could really mount a rally above 1,000. And then during the Reagan years, when I was working for the Gipper in his budget office, the Dow went up 12-fold, 12-fold. And we've been off to the races ever since. We've had our tough times, no question about it. The meltdown of 2008, 2009, COVID, other things that I don't want to talk about, particularly wasting time. But here we are at 50,000. And it just goes to show, and this is the point I want to make, stocks for the long run. This is a perfect time. You have a very bearish media. The media is always bearish. All right, the Wall Street Journal running pieces on the front page about how manufacturing is down, and then the ISM Manufacturing Index comes back strong. I mean, and even today, they're barely reporting it, the 50,000. But you had this, little techie sell-off. You can't, as ordinary people, ordinary investors, you can't outfox the market. You're not going to outsmart the market. And the reality is passive investing, which means you buy and hold the indexes, right? I don't care. The S&P, you can do it as an ETF, other indexes. Buy and hold them. Active management, I know there's some brilliant portfolio managers out there, but they're few and far between. Passive management is cheaper and more profitable. You own stocks for the long run. And keep adding to your position for the long run. I just want to get that little ad in. You've heard me say this before. But here we are at 50,000. You'd have missed yesterday. All right, if you're trying to outfox the market, all these hedgies, I want to know how many of them figured they were going to be up 1,200 points, 2.5% yesterday. I doubt it. because the prevailing groupthink on Wall Street among the hedge fund community is they're selling software stocks because AI is going to eat up software. We'll talk about that later in the show, but they would have missed it. Here's another thing they're going to miss. You'd never see this. The reason this market is so strong is because corporate profits, which are the mother's milk of stocks, are very strong. And once again, take a look at the front page of the Wall Street Journal. You got several articles about the Dow 50,000. They're not positive articles, but they don't mention profits. Not once do they. Maybe I missed it. I'll go back and take a look at the paper, or I'll look it on my little phone. I'll get it, pull up the website. They don't mention profits. And profits are the mother's milk of stocks. I have said this for so many decades. Because profits fuel the valuation. All right, the two things you look at, interest rates and profits. Interest rates are stable, all right, stable to lower, but the discount rate is the 10-year, and that's running around 4.25. It's not moving much one way or another. And that's okay. It's a good number, moderate number, and profits keep rising in double digits. In double digits. And profit margins in double digits, 12, 13% for the whole index, S&P 500, Dow Jones, you name it. Profits are the mother's milk of stocks. You don't want to buy if profits are on the way down. You wait. Then when profits recover, you buy them. You buy the stocks. Unit labor costs. Okay, stay with me on this. You've heard me talk about this before. Unit labor costs are wages minus productivity, right? That's the cost of labor. It's basically the best measure of inflation. It's 1.1% unit labor cost. That's all it is for the past 4 quarters. It's fabulous. It shows you how low the inflation rate is, and it shows you why companies are so profitable. Productivity, right? Output per hour, how many goods each person is producing. Productivity is soaring right now. Probably because of the technology revolution or other reasons. This is a productivity-based rally. Productivity generates profits. Unit labor costs are low. These are the things you should be looking at. Of course, the newspapers don't. Even the Wall Street Journal, they don't talk about this stuff, and that's pathetic. I'm sorry about that the coverage is lousy. But that's the truth. Ed Yardeni, Dr. Ed Yardeni, was on our TV show, I don't know, I think this past week, maybe the week before. He's always reporting on profits. And he's a terrific economist. And he likes good economic policies, sound thinker. But I read his stuff because it's so fabulous because it keys to profits. Ed Hyman, same way, looks at profits. That's the only stuff. And, of course, the papers don't report on it. And then, look, behind this Dow 50,000 story is a very pro-growth policy axis coming from President Trump. The one big, beautiful bill has your tax cuts, deregulation. Let me just pause a minute. The tax cuts, okay? First of all, you're going to get a lot of refunds from last year because the bill was in July and the IRS never did catch up. No tax on tips and no tax on overtime, less tax on seniors, things of that. It's very helpful, okay? But also, on the business side, the corporate rate stayed at 21%, which is at the low end of advanced countries. That didn't move, permanent. But 100% expensing, 100% year one immediate expensing was made permanent in this bill. Machinery, equipment, R&D credits, factories. I mean, that's fabulous. And it allows companies to invest in themselves, their products, and their workforce. Okay, the workforce benefits from this. So that's behind this rally, and it's very profitable. And the deregulation will probably slash as up to $2 trillion in extraneous, unnecessary costs for businesses large and small. Then you've got your drill, baby, drill. Now, oil prices have drifted higher because of the Iranian tensions. We will talk about that in the show because it looks to me like we're going to have to bomb Iran again, which is the right thing to do. But the point is, oil's come down from about $80 really to $60, probably drop into the mid-50s, and the gasoline prices are down, and, oil permeates the whole economy. So I'm just saying these policies are all pro-growth. All right, and there's a business investment boom. That's called capital deepening, when they invest in new machinery and equipment and build new factories. We're building factories. Foreigners are coming here to build factories to avoid tariffs. And we're building factories because we can export our goods to better countries because Mr. Trump's reciprocity policy on trade. So all these things are pro-growth, and they're pro-stock market. They're pro-profits. And then I'll say, by the way, the Trump savings accounts, this underscores why you want to get these Trump savings accounts. And they're off to a good start. Newborns get $1,000 from Uncle Sam, up to $5,000 from their families, up to $2,500 from employers. And you can take people from poverty families or poverty areas and make them millionaires, by the time they're age 30, 35, or if they hold it till they're 65, it'll be even better. You have tables depending on your rate of return. At a 10% rate of return, which is pretty much the rate of return of the last 100 years in the stock market. That's the Jeremy Siegel stocks for the long run tables. Actually, it's about 200 years. But anyway, 10% a year, depending on how much money is in your account. But you'll be a millionaire certainly by the time you retire, and probably a lot earlier than that. And these kids, newborn kids, the new generation, they'll learn about the stock market. They'll learn about business. They'll learn about profits. They'll own a piece of the rock. They'll have ownership. And they'll understand why free market capitalism is the greatest system in the world. You want to end poverty? There's no better system than free market capitalism anywhere in the world. That's why the Trump savings accounts are so important. And they need to be sold left and right. They will be. They will be. This is a terrific thing. Terrific thing. I'm seeing Mr. Trump on Monday. I'm going to interview him for Fox Business. It'll be great fun. I haven't actually seen him in a little bit. We talk from time to time, but I'm just saying I'm looking forward to the interview. Heck, we've even got reduction in the federal budget deficit. If you saw Kim Strassel's column yesterday in the Wall Street Journal, the OMB, Office of Management and Budget, Russell Vogt, my pal, he's the director, smart guy. Because of faster economic growth, you're running 4 or 5% GDP, which is incredible. Because of faster growth and money coming in from tariffs and spending restraint and some rescissions, you're probably cutting the long-term, the 10-year deficit by about, I think the number is $12 trillion. All right, that still leaves a big deficit, but it's good progress. Good progress. So we'll be watching that, but that's also good news. Uncle Sam will be borrowing less. Interest expense on the debt is coming down because the deficit's coming down because of economic growth, because of all the growth incentives in that one big beautiful bill. Profits are soaring, and so is the stock market. It's a rocket ship. You know that? An absolute rocket ship. And I'll just say congratulations, America. Down 50,000. We'll take a break. I'll be right back.
The Larry Kudlow Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Larry Kudlow Show. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
I mean, I'm just, I hate to do this because it's a good newspaper. I'm just reading the Wall Street Journal, their lead story on the website right now. Trees simply don't go to the sky. They're worried about AI. They're worried about technological advances. I'm going through this, and I'm looking like, what about economic growth? What about economic growth policies? And what about profits? Caterpillar's run-up is now fueled by data centers' power demands. Well, IBM is, that's all true. It's a good thing. The data center and the AI is a good thing. Not every company's going to survive the revolution, never does. But by and large, we're all going to be better off for it, just like the information revolution. But there's no mention here. It's just so stupid. There's no mention here of profits. Not one single profit, nothing. It's just like, profits are like fairy dust. You just sprinkle it on the company and the stock goes up. You sprinkle it on the economy and the GDP goes up. And nobody wants to talk about it. I'm just reading this story in the journal. The road to Dow 50,000 was perilous. What next could be rockier? You could go, that's the headline. The AI boom that pushed stocks higher is turning into a pressure. You can go out and kill yourself. But I don't want you to, because these media reporters are wrong. They're just dead wrong. They do not understand the miracles that are happening in our economy. And by the way, I haven't talked about it, but we're growing at 4 to 5%, which is itself incredible. Where are the stories about that? 3.8 in the second quarter, 4.4 in the third quarter, and something like 4.5 to 5 in the fourth quarter. Where's the stories about that? The 3 Trump quarters. The first quarter of the year was Joe Biden. That was negative. Now, even if you put that in, it's still above 3% for the year. The Federal Reserve said 1.7. The Congressional Budget Office said 1.7. We're growing twice as fast as all these PhD economists said. Where's the story about that? Where's the story about economic growth and profits? Holy cow. And wealth creation. Anyway, we'll take a break. On the other side, we'll talk some politics with Rich Lowry and David Webb. I'm Kudlow. Folks, please stick around. Lots coming.
The Larry Kudlow Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Larry Kudlow Show. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
All right, we're going to talk some politics with two very good friends and two smart analysts. We already talk about this Dow 50,000, but there's a lot of other stuff going on. Trump signed an executive order. Actually, he signed 2 executive orders going after Iran. He signed one going after Cuba. The Iranian talks have basically broken down. No surprise. There's a second wave of protests now developing inside Iran, which has collapsed. Its banking system is gone. Its currency is gone. Its economy is gone. What you got left is a bunch of mullahs and a military dictatorship. Blah, blah, blah. The death of the Washington Post. What a wonderful story that is. I don't know. The death of the Washington Post. Anyway, we got Rich Lowry, editor-in-chief of the National Review, and David Webb, who's a Fox News contributor and the David Webb Show, Sirius XM talk show host. It's very good. Rich Lowry, you know that you're going to have a phenomenal bull market because Karl Rove writes, Republicans have an economy problem. All right, that was his column this week. So that's like, let me get this right. The GDP now is 4.5%. Consumer confidence, the Michigan survey, which is really a phony survey loaded up with Democrats, but that thing is up the highest in 6 months, and we just hit Dow 50,000. So Republicans have an economy problem. That's from Karl Rove, another genius, another political genius. Rich Lowry, go ahead.
So I defer to you, obviously, Larry, on all economic matters, but I think politically, the question is whether you get growth and you get higher wages such that people don't feel so much anymore the higher prices that mostly happened under Biden, right? This is a Biden problem that is biting Trump still politically because inflation goes up 8 or 9%. When the inflation rate goes lower, prices don't decline. They're just increasing at a slightly slower rate. So I think people have still felt that, at least people kind of lower down the income scale. And what you want over time is that effect to just vitiate because everyone has more dollars in their wallet. And hopefully that's what's happening.
Well, it seems to. That's what the numbers are. I had Kevin Hassett, NEC director, on yesterday, and he was saying you're getting all these refunds now from last year's tax cut bill. It's the refunds themselves are probably worth $1,000 to $1,500 for a middle class family, but overall, you're going to get about $4,000 in refunds. Last year was $3,000. You get about $4,000, a little more. These are big numbers. I mean, a lot of probably 60-70% of American families won't pay any taxes. Yeah, you could say that's not good. I understand, but the burden is down. Wages are rising much faster than inflation. I mean, but the stock market. David Webb. People underestimate the stock market. Not only it's important. I mean, 130 million, 135 million, roughly, people are in the stock market, one way or another. 401ks, IRAs, even union pension funds own stocks. So what you're seeing now at Dow 50,000 and this phenomenal rally, this is not nothing politically. I mean, this is a factor. Of course, no one believes it's a factor because they don't look at the stock market. But I'm telling you, it's a factor. People's wallets and wealth is rising. They're in the market. I know not everybody, but most. And by the way, maybe it's not that they're billionaires. It's just that if you're earning $60,000, $70,000, $80,000 a year and you got 10, 12, 15 grand in the stock market and you're up 50,000 in the Dow, it's a lot. You're creating wealth. And people, I'm telling you, I don't know how it's going to be in November, but the stock market's going to be a factor in the midterms, just like it was a factor in the general election.
It's a factor also because the mistake being made, and maybe lack of knowledge for some, is that somehow Main Street and Wall Street are disconnected.
Right.
Let's tie a couple things together, which includes the one big, beautiful bill. The majority of, or the first really big tranche of e-file returns, typically those people in, middle income families, single or family units, those start coming back in February or March. So now 50 million or so Americans will see that. If you have a 401k program, a craft, something, whatever it is, some form of retirement, that matters to you. If you have other factors in your life that rely on credit, along with better credit numbers right now as far as interest rates, things are going to start looking better. So more money in your pocket, more there. The market looks at that, Larry. You know this. Americans will spend a certain amount of that 50 million or so. That's kind of the typical average. Will spend some of that money. That's consumer activity. You look at the CE survey, consumer expenditure. You look at consumer price index. And then when you tack onto that the manufacturing numbers from last week, or this week actually, look really good, that means that we're probably going to see more stability in the hiring and maintaining and retention of jobs. Look, Americans like instant gratification. The plan here, Larry, and you and I know this, and so do you, Rich, is to make sure that people get actual results, not narratives and ginned up polls, or frankly, I don't care right, left, or otherwise, the pundits out there who are trying to tell a story to remain relevant for a week when the story really changes in a week or two.
Who's Bruce Melman? Does anybody know? Bruce Melman?
Is he a Democratic pollster? Or am I
think so, because Rove bases his column on this guy, Bruce Melman. Well, I think he is a Democrat.
He's another one of these. I mean, I don't know much about him, but he's another one of these consultants out there. They claim to be bipartisan. That's how they work. I don't know much about him other than that. But again, what I'm talking about is what people will actually see. So I don't care what Bruce Melman, or with all due respect, Carl, you or anyone say, because again, what did I just say? When majority of those e-file returns, or the first big tranche comes out, and 50 million Americans or so see a difference. When other things kick in, this is why the one big beautiful bill, the tax parts of that needed to be already in place and passed to take effect. When you look at 100% expensing, that means jobs. That means retention of jobs. When those things kick in, it adds a lot more to the economy and therefore how people really not just feel, but how they're able to act. And that then comes back around to how they feel.
They're getting, by the way, they're getting good wage increases. Profits are very strong. Profits drive stocks, but profits also drive the economy. And the 100% expensing, Rich, it may sound obscure, but that has given companies so much more profitability. I mean, they're being attacked. Amazon, for example, being attacked. I love this in the Wall Street Journal, the great pro-business newspaper. Anyway, Amazon's being attacked in a story because they're making use of the 100% expensing, immediate expensing, in order to build new plants, new equipment. They're going into AI, which scares the bejesus out of the other companies, blah, 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 blah. So that's – anyway, this is a good story. It's an underrated story. I'm just telling you, Dow 50,000 is a good sign for the GOP in the midterms. And if the stock market collapsed, I would say bad sign. But it's a good sign. And, of course, nobody's going to pay much attention to it except me. I don't know. Yeah, I don't want to be the only one. But
well, that's enough.
You're not the only one, Larry, and I'll tell you, Americans just need to realize that their world has changed in a good way when it comes to the economy. They need to see the fruits of it. Fair point there. They will see the fruits of it. That's the thing the left can't stop. They can't stop reality. They can only try to change the narrative with polling.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's exactly right. The narrative with polling, those polls are just awful. Rich, I'm going to change gears. Last night, Trump put out a long executive order. Let's see, 10:15 p.m. is when it came in to our mailboxes, addressing threats to the United States by the government of Iran. And it's a barn burner, all right? I may be the only living human that reads this stuff because I used to be in this game, but it basically is a barn burner. The talks broke down. Iran, of course, wants to continue to enrich uranium and develop ICBMs. And, of course, the American position is stop on both counts. The troops are amassing the resources, the flotillas. What do you think, Rich? We're going to have another round of bombing in Iran?
Yeah, I think that the most important two words in terms of understanding Trump's foreign policy is coercive diplomacy. He's willing to talk. He wants to do peace deals, but he's holding a gun, or he might be holding a gun, behind his back or not. You don't know, right? You don't know whether he's going to follow through with the threat. And this is just what he's done with Iran so far. We got to see where it goes. I'd be skeptical of any deal. But it's so amazing because this is the most anti-American regime on earth, I think, in the sense that anti-Americanism was its founding purpose, one of its founding purposes. And for 50 years, we have just believed they can do anything, and we're not going to hit them, with the occasional exceptions, Ronald Reagan. Otherwise, I mean, they killed and maimed our guys in Iraq, the nuclear program. We can't do anything about it. We just have to talk to them about it and bless the deal in effect bless the program the way Obama did. And Trump threw all that out the window by directly hitting them with that nuclear strike. And if you're the Iranians, they don't take my advice, but I'd be really nervous. I would. The Maduro trade, I'm not sure whether I'd make that one, and just assume he's bluffing. So if he could really denude this regime or get a deal, again, I'm skeptical, but a deal worth having, that would be amazing. And then Cuba's on the plate too, and same deal. After the Bay of Pigs are like, this nasty little anti-American communist dictatorship, we can't do anything about it.
Well, there was
Trump has a different attitude.
No, that's right. By the way, I love coercive diplomacy. It's a great phrase. There was another executive order out yesterday. I think it was yesterday or the day before about Cuba. No more oil purchases. No nothing. All right. So I don't know how the Cubans can survive. By the way, the Iranian, among the other things with Iran, David Webb, he slapped a 25% tariff. This is tariffs on so-called secondary tariffs. Any country that does business with Iran, and it's not just oil, can be anything, if you read through this executive order, will then get a 25% tariff on any and all business with the United States. And it can rise from there. And he makes it very clear. Commerce Department, State Department will determine the size of the tariff. So the noose is closing. I mean, I think it's true for Iran and Cuba, David Webb.
It is, and the thing is, these are all connected. You know, the neophytes out there that haven't really been following foreign policy, don't pay attention, try to put them in silos, Iran in one, Cuba in another, Venezuela in other aspects. But they're all connected. Overarching strategy is to isolate Iran, and other factors come into play. The Russians have pulled a lot of their Mediterranean fleet out or are using them to escort the ghost ships out. So that helps isolate Iran even more. Cuba, because of what happened in Venezuela and Claudia Sheinbaum in Mexico, is not being as effective as propping up Cuba as she'd like to be. Cuba's now on the table. They're part of that Cuba-China connection, which also brings China into play in the Middle East. The more and more we isolate Iran, the more chance that they have to do what's necessary, bloody but necessary, unfortunately, in order to get rid of this theocratic dictatorship under the mullahs. And when you look at the IRGC, and their internal Al-Quds force and others, they're now facing a problem with the Kurds, who are also one more capable. That doesn't get a lot of attention, but that's helping to take a piece of the Iranian focus away from outside. So they're signaling in the Med, their boats, their drone occasionally. But what's happening is they're being isolated, and the instrument of national power that is the biggest here right now happens to be the economic power, where other nations can no longer be part of helping to prop up, even if they don't intend it in any evil way, economically Iran.
Yeah. But by the way, with Cuba, Mexico actually has, Sheinbaum is helping us on Cuba. No more oil. But there's hardly anybody left on the island. Everybody's left. Mm-hmm. It's like some Gilligan's Island cartoon thing. You come in there.
No, it's another case. You know, California is not as a stark example of this, but you take a beautiful place, which should be a wonderful place, Cuba, where there should be massive, skyscrapers, and everyone should want a vacation there and have condos there, and you ruin it, right? Yeah. And this whole thing about, isn't it so nice and touching that they have such attachment to vintage cars? It's because they can't get any decent cars, right?
Vintage cars.
Car is nice to look at. It's not nice to run. It has to drive. And that's what communism has done.
I love those movies that show those old cars, but it has nothing to do with modern-day Cuba. I got to take a break, fellas. Hang on. Rich Lowry, editor-in-chief of National Review. David Webb, Fox News contributor, Sirius XM talk show. I'm Kudlow. We'll be right back.
The Larry Kudlow Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Larry Kudlow Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
So we're talking politics. How about the demise of the Washington Post? Not exactly, but they've lost it. I guess Jeff Bezos, the owner, the Amazon multi-billionaire. Anyway, they've cut a third of the newsroom, I guess. That's what we reported. And Peggy Noonan, of course, is bemoaning the fact that the Washington Post is not going to be the great Washington newspaper. And I don't know. I mean, I think it became a left-wing rag. Honestly, I don't think anybody paid any mind to it. That's why they didn't make any money. That's why they had to cut a third of the newsroom. Rich Lowry's here, editor-in-chief of National Review. David Webb, Fox News contributor's here. He's a talk show host at Sirius XM. Thank you both for helping me on Saturday. I appreciate it. You know that. But one thing, Rich, so Peggy Noonan is bemoaning the Washington Post, blah, 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 blah. What about the Washington Times and the Washington Examiner? They're still going.
Yeah, there you go. You just have a problem with Wall Street Journal columnists today, Larry, between our friends Carl and Peggy. Excuse me. Look, one thing that's been so annoying about this is the idea that Jeff Bezos has some obligation to write a check to lose $100 million on this
right.
left-wing newspaper year after year, and he just doesn't.
I mean, right. It's And
sorry. And you can make a left-wing rag work. The New York Times has worked as a business proposition, but they've been very creative. A lot of people go there for games. A lot of people go there for cooking. A lot of people go there for The Athletic, which is great sports coverage, sports website they gobbled up. And the Post kind of tried to adjust to the new era, but just failed. And now maybe Bezos has a plan going ahead. I hope he does. The editorial pages have gotten better. It's a free market page now, which is fantastic.
Really?
Yeah, it is. You can tell how much, no one pays as much attention as they used to. Yeah, but they have a free market perspective now. I think that's one reason they've lost a lot of subscribers is because everyone is used to the slop.
Oh, yeah.
Putting out before. So there's a question whether they can kind of make the adjustment and win a new audience. I kind of hope it works. I like newspapers. I like them to survive. And if there's a better, more reasonable Washington Post, that would be fantastic. But again, he has no obligation to fund this thing that was failing. Like, none of the journalists complaining seem to have any introspection about the fact that their product was losing $100 million a year.
Yeah. So the lefties don't trust him anymore because of the editorial page, but the reporters are not good. I mean, down through the years, I have dealt with the economic reporters, the fiscal reporters and so forth, and with only a few exceptions, they're very biased. In fact, I sort of, when I was in the White House, preferred some of the political reporters I thought were better than the economic reporters. At least they quoted you properly. But David Webb, what about, look, you've got two conservative papers in the Washington Times and the Washington Examiner. They both have very strong online presences. What's wrong with that?
What's wrong with this is, one, a lot of people are looking at it the wrong way. I did my own analysis of the Washington Post, and I did do it versus the other newspapers, including the newspaper industry where I worked a long time ago. Newspaper industry overall had declined. The Washington Post, even prior to Bezos' purchase, was already declining. They had run into a number of issues. So this is not necessarily just a left-right story. It's about also not serving the greater population, and that's one of the biggest mistakes by the Post. The Times and the Examiner are there, and yes, while they lean more right than left, to be fair, they also serve the reporting that's needed out there, and that's the difference. Then they have an online capacity, better online, whereas the Post was declining. It once was a bigger player, from about 68 million uniques a month, but that began to decline over the last decade plus. This is not Trump's fault or the left.
They're pulling the plug on us. They're pulling the plug on us because we're capitalists here at WABC. Anyway, gentlemen, I appreciate it very, very much. Rich Lowry, thank you. David Webb, thank you. Washington Post, bye-bye. I'm Kudlow, folks. We're going to take a break, and we're going to look at the economy. On the other side, John Carney and E.J. Antoni. Please stay with us. Lots more coming.
The Larry Kudlow Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Larry Kudlow Show. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back, everybody. So, let's take a look at the economy. And the Atlanta Fed GDP, I think it's 4.2 for the fourth quarter, was 4.4 in the third, 3.8 in the second. So, you got a run rate, let's just call it 4% plus. And all the big shot institutions were looking for 1.7, the Federal Reserve, the CBO, and all the rest of it. Of course, there's nothing being written about this. Nobody's really covering this in the newspapers. That's too bad. But it's there. Trumponomics is working, whatever you may think about it. Anyway, we've got some Federal Reserve issues and the inflation rate coming down. So let's talk to John Carney, Breitbart news editor for economics and finance, and co-author of the daily Breitbart Business Digest, which is a terrific daily publication, and E.J. Antoni, who's economist and senior fellow at Unleash Prosperity, and he's the head economist at the Heritage Foundation. So, John Carney, I was reading all your stuff here on the Fed. You're really digging deep here. Who's going to be the chairman of the board, and who's going to be the head of the Federal Open Market Committee? And you're right. I think legally, they're two different. They could be two different people, but they won't be. I mean, it's not.
It's very unlikely.
Yeah, it's very unlikely.
Right, and it's never happened before. It's always been the same. The reason I brought it up was really actually I was trying to give a warning to the Republicans in the Senate who are saying that they may try to stop Trump from being able to get Kevin Warsh confirmed. My point is that putting stress on the institution will start to show the cracks. And a lot of these cracks are things that I don't think the senators even know about. I don't think they know that Trump will get to appoint one of the sitting governors as the acting chair. I don't think they know that you could have a split between the board and the Federal Open Market Committee. And if they were more aware of this, they wouldn't try to, they wouldn't stress test this. Just get Warsh confirmed. If you have other problems that's, with Donald Trump and you want to argue with him about that, that's fine. Get Warsh confirmed and let and yes, the committee will elect Warsh. He'll be the chairman of the board as well, because that's what Trump appoints him to. I don't think this will break down unless we get to a point where the Senate has frozen the Fed and you're not able to appoint new people to it because Tom Tillis decided he's mad at Jeanine Pirro.
Senator Tom Tillis. I know the guy really well. But you know who Trump would pick? So let's assume that your worst case. And so Trump has to pick a sitting governor, right? There are 7 governors of the Federal Reserve. He has to pick one to be the chairman. He'll pick Steve Myron. All right, yes. The hardest of the hard, and Myron's great. I mean, the guy takes no prisoners. E.J. Antoni. I mean, you read his stuff, and I've interviewed him a couple times. He's just like the purest supply sider in the history of he's more Laffer than Laffer. He's more Kudlow than Kudlow. The guy's unbelievable.
Well, I don't know if anybody can out Kudlow, but whatever the case. Look, I agree. He's got great ideas, and part of the reason why I think we're all excited about Kevin Warsh is the fact that he shares those supply side ideas. He rejects these faulty Phillips curve notions that somehow economic prosperity causes inflation, that somehow productivity increases will cause inflation, that somehow growth, a greater supply of products and services available to buy will cause inflation. Those things are all inherently disinflationary, in fact, deflationary, because they increase the supply of products and services available relative to the amount of money in the economy. So it's the exact opposite of too much money chasing too few goods. So again, it puts downward pressure on inflation. And it's great to see this kind of change in thinking at the Fed, because part of the reason why the Fed gave us 40-year high inflation and the fastest rise in interest rates in also 40 years, why they gave us a regional bank crisis in the spring of 2023, why they have fundamentally broken the housing market over the last 5 years. All of these issues, Larry, I fundamentally believe go back to the Fed's flawed thinking and the failed models that they use, and the fact that they don't see, as Kevin Warsh does, inflation as a choice. Instead, they see inflation as this kind of just outside force that was inflicted upon them, as opposed to something that they themselves caused.
That's a great point. It's an outside force. It's not what me. It's not my fault. That's a great point. It's always exogenous, never endogenous to their policies. And that is true historically. Like in the bad old days, aka the 70s, right? Inflation was always blamed on outside forces like the oil shock, which they bungled because they monetized it. That was the big one. Or if you had agriculture shocks. And never the money supply, okay? Never the amount of reserves they're putting into the system. Never the amount of high-powered credit they're putting into the system. Never their fault. Always outside forces. You're exactly right. But I will say this, John, your other point, though, is really important. The Fed funds rate doesn't exist anymore. You are so right about that. Without reserve requirements, and I know our listeners, we're a little bit in the weeds here, but it's great fun. anchored by interest on reserve balances. This is the banks holding reserves. By the way, they shouldn't even do that. But that's the Fed. It's about 365. I checked with Conrad DeQuatros because it never gets published. It's the same as the Fed funds rate, but it is the Fed funds rate. They're supplying reserves to the banks, and the banks depend on those reserves. And among other reasons, they have to have all this capital to support their combined balance sheets. So if you're going to shrink, as Kevin Warsh wants to shrink the balance sheet, he's going to have to, get Bowman, what's her name, Mickey Bowman. They have to deregulate these capital requirements, and in order to shrink the balance sheet.
And if you do shrink the balance sheet, you want to bring back the reserve requirement. I think a lot of people don't realize that we don't have a reserve requirement at all anymore,
right?
Because they flooded the system with so much reserves that banks that they set the reserve requirement to zero, which, by the way, some legal scholars think may be illegal because it is essential. The Fed is supposed to set a reserve requirement. Setting it to zero is the same as not having one. Instead, and everybody obsesses over the FOMC and the Fed funds rate, but that is really just for pretend. The Fed funds rate does nothing at all right now. It's all the interest on reserves, which, by the way, is controlled by the board and not the FOMC.
Right.
So the FOMC is almost a show committee right now. Now, look, the board always sets the rate where the FOMC does, but it doesn't have to. There's no requirement. It could change, and if there was ever a conflict between the board and the FOMC, as things are currently arranged, the board wins every time because they set the interest on reserve rate.
So what is the leverage ratio that affects Treasury bonds? You guys know anything about that? They have to. It forces the banks to carry a lot more reserves behind their holdings of Treasury bills, notes, and bonds. It's the leverage reserve ratio. What's it called?
The supplemental leverage ratio.
That's it.
And it is, and it really was never meant to be something that controlled what the banks were doing. It was supposed to be a backup to a backup. And instead, it was allowed to become a thing that actually constrains lending. It is, again, just like interest on reserves was never meant to be the main monetary policy, the supplemental leverage ratio was also not meant to be the controlling bank capital requirement. But here we are, and we've accidentally allowed the entire financial system to be deformed in ways that we never deliberated, never discussed, and we're really not sure that it works out. It hasn't been stress tested, right? People say, oh, well, this is all so that we don't have a financial crisis again. I'm not confident this could prevent a financial crisis.
Well, look at they don't need it. They should free up reserves to make loans. They don't need this stuff. But the Senate Banking Committee, I don't know who knows anything about this stuff. They should. EJ, just coming back though to the issue, to John Carney's issue about the who the chairman's going to be. Tim Scott, the chairman of the Senate Banking Committee, which is a very powerful position, actually, in this game. But Tim has said that there's a difference between being inept, which Jay Powell is surely inept, and a criminal. And the problem here isn't so much Tom Tillis, who actually likes Kevin Warsh and has said good things about Kevin Warsh. The problem is Jeanine Pirro. Now, I love Jeanine Pirro. She's a great lady. She's now the U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia, okay? But she's the one who slapped a subpoena on Jay Powell. And so now there in the Fed will not turn over documents about the building's cost overrun, okay? And Scott, by the way, has said that Powell did not lie before the committee hearing. So take that off the table. All they have to do is submit some papers, maybe have a sit down, and the whole thing will go away. But, Tim Scott's saying, no, he's not a criminal. We don't need a criminal subpoena. I mean, that would end this whole craziness. You want Warsh up there send the nomination in formally, which they haven't done yet, and hold hearings, right? We want to know what Kevin's going to say about all these things. But this subpoena, which I think was a very bad idea, I think Janine pulled the trigger too fast. And now she wants to defend her turf. I don't know. This whole thing's crazy. Anyway, what do you think about this, EJ?
Well, Larry, one of the things is I don't want to absolve Powell here. And what I mean by that is he's not an economist. He's actually an attorney, as we know. And as an attorney, he should have known better. In other words, he should have known that when Congress asks for information, you need to give them that information. And if you don't, they're going to make a formal request.
No, I agree. Yes, on that point.
And if you ignore that formal request, then it's going to go to the DOJ. And if the DOJ asks you for it and you ignore them, now you're going to get the formal request. And if you don't respond to that, that's when bad things can start happening. Well, and that's the stage that we're at right now. So, again, Powell should have known better. I have to imagine he purposely escalated this.
Well, you may well be right. I mean, it's the stupidest thing I've ever seen, but you may well be right. And you're right about, look, he's got, not only is he a lawyer, come on, the Fed has a whole battery of lawyers. They got a whole legal division. They have a general counsel, and underneath the general counsel, they got a whole bunch of lawyers. And, I worked at the New York Fed. The New York Fed, which gets embroiled in market lawsuits, they have a whole battery of lawyers. So they know, right? It's not like they don't know how the system works. He's not a criminal. But if they don't turn the papers over, oh my God, then John Carney is going to be the chairman of the Fed, because that's who Trump is going to pick. All right, let's take a break right here. Then we'll come back and talk about these inflation numbers, which have come down so much, and your outside study. We're talking to John Carney of Breitbart and E.J. Antoni of the Committee to Unleash Prosperity. I'm Kudlow. We'll be right back.
The Larry Kudlow Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Larry Kudlow Show, entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
So I guess I apologize to listeners. We were very technical in the weeds in our first segment, but that's what happens when you have smart people. Basically, all right, John Carney, Breitbart, Business Digest, and E.J. Antoni, Heritage Foundation. So, John Carney, whatever the derivative of the rate is, they're not going to lower it, are they? They're going to be stubborn about this, the Fed, until Warsh gets on.
That's right. The Fed is not going to move at all as long as Powell's still there. So that means we're looking at, Powell's there till May 15th. So we're looking at this summer for the earliest rate cut.
Does that affect, long rates, I've been watching the 10-year. It's kind of fluctuating. 4.25. Sometimes it drops a little bit below 4. I don't see much change in the long end.
It shouldn't affect the long end because, look, the long end is trying to figure out, what policy is going to do, not just over the next couple months, but over the next few years. I think Kevin Warsh's testimony will be really important, when he has his confirmation hearings, because then we'll get some people say, oh, maybe this guy's going to be an uber hawk, and I think that's wrong. I think he's actually just going to take a rational, look at policy. He's not a guy who wants high rates all the time. He's not a guy who wants low rates all the time. He's a guy who wants the rates to match what the economy, what the economy is doing. And so I think what he's going to say, I think that the hearings, that's when to watch the long end of the rates. Yeah. What do people think the Warsh chairmanship will produce over the next 4 years, and maybe the next 8 years, rather than just, what Powell's going to do at the next 2 meetings. There's only 2 Powell meetings left.
Right. So, EJ, tell me again now this truflation, is that what it's called, that you're looking at, the 0.9% year-on-year inflation rate? It's interesting to me because it matches the 4-quarter change in unit labor costs, wages less productivity, which in some sense, I know it's the cost of labor, but to some extent it's the inflation for the whole economy. It's like the rock bottom inflation rate. So what is this thing that you've come up with?
So, Larry, what Truthflation basically is a project to scrape data
just got a minute
in real time.
Yep.
And what they essentially do is they gather literally millions of prices every single day and can give you, therefore, a up to the date inflation rate. You compare that to something like the Bureau of Labor Statistics, where they look at a few thousand prices just 3 times a month. So this is literally orders of magnitude more inputs that we're looking at in an index like Truthflation. And they're not the only ones, but I think they do a really good job with it.
They got a website?
One of the things...
They got a website?
I'm sorry?
They have a website?
Yes, yeah, you can find them at truthflation.com. And essentially, Larry, what you can see there is a very timely index that doesn't suffer from the lags that BLS does in things like home ownership costs and rents.
All right, they're pulling the plug on us. John Carney, Breitbart, thank you very much. E.J. Antoni, Unleash Prosperity, thank you. Folks, we'll take a quick break. And Jonathan Turley, great lawyer, Jonathan Turley's got a new book out. We'll talk about it. I'm Kudlow. Stick around.
The Larry Kudlow Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Larry Kudlow Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
So we have all points bold now for Jonathan Turley. I'm sure we'll find him. He's a constitutional law professor at George Washington University. He's Fox News legal analyst. Brilliant guy, great guy. And he's got a new book out, very interesting new book, which is called Rage and the Republic, The Unfinished Story of the American Revolution. And he asks, I haven't read the book, but he wrote a long piece about it on Fox Digital. And he basically, one assertion he makes is why is the American and French revolutions so different? The American and French, they occurred almost the same time. French Revolution was a few years after the American Revolution, but not just a couple years. And that the American Revolution wound up basically be producing the oldest democracy in history. That's us, right? With a constitution that we live by, even though some people are attacking it. The French Revolution, on the other hand, he calls a blood-soaked tyranny known as the Reign of Terror. Right? That was the Robespierre. People will recall the Robespierre. I mean, they never had a constitution. And so many of the European states never had a constitution. And we did. You know, James Madison and others, but Madison was the lead, Alexander Hamilton, obviously. And then, of course, the writers of the Declaration of Independence, Thomas Jefferson, who contributed but did not write the Constitution, John Adams, et cetera, et cetera. And it's an interesting point. I mean, France, by the way, look at it now. I hate to say it, but it produces very little. It's fallen way behind in almost every area. And it has unstable governments. I mean, they routinely run different governments. Okay, I think we found Jonathan Troll. Good. So, Jonathan, I've given the lead-in, the blood-soaked tyranny versus the oldest democracy, for your book, Rage and the Republic, The Unfinished Story of the American Revolution. So I did, but that's what we did on the TV show. But we left the TV show, and I knew this, but you mentioned it, that the founders, a bunch of the founders were friendly with Adam Smith, corresponding with Adam Smith, the creator of capitalism, or the first writer of capitalism for the Scottish Enlightenment. And so how does it play into your book?
Well, thank you very much for having me on, Larry. It's an important part of the book because the second half of the book looks at whether this unique republic that we created can survive in the 21st century. And it looks back at the first half of the book, which are identifying those elements that came together that took us down a path different from France, which ended up in the Reign of Terror. And some of those elements are going to be vital in the 21st century. The most important that I identify is having a liberty-enhancing economy. And this goes back to Adam Smith and The Wealth of Nations, that book came out at the same year as our Declaration of Independence. And it wasn't a huge hit in Europe, but it was a hit here because the framers recognized what Adam Smith came up with as an economic theory as the perfect companion to their political theory, because ours was the first Enlightenment revolution. But the framers understood that if you didn't have economic independence, you couldn't be truly free. And so they embraced capitalism. And it was the combination of that economic and political theory that made this the model for democracies and made us the oldest and most successful democracy in history.
You know, it's just so interesting. France has never recovered. They never really embraced capitalism. I mean, maybe bits and pieces occasionally, but basically not. They're not the free market economy that we are. And here we are, Dow 50,000, Jonathan, plowing through 135 million people increasing their wealth because they own stocks. I mean, it's just an interesting story. And you're right, the Wealth of Nations came out in 1776. I forgot that. So now what about these modern Jacobins who are trying to tear the Constitution down? And you know what? I was going through your op-ed piece on Fox Digital. So that the head of the UCal Berkeley Law School wants to end the Constitution, change the Constitution. My friend John Yoo teaches law out there. He's a constitutionalist. I mean, but yeah, this Erwin Chemerinsky, dean of the UC Berkeley School of Law, which I guess has a lot of prestige or used to. He's the author of No Democracy Lasts Forever, How the Constitution Threatens the United States. Oh, my God. Oh, my God.
Indeed, Larry, these are the voices that we heard before. These are what I call the new Jacobins, that they are actually calling for the elimination of the very things that proved the difference between us and the French Revolution, that avoided the reign of terror. They want to change the Supreme Court, pack the Supreme Court. They want to change the U.S. Senate. They want to have more sort of direct democracy. Those were all the things that the framers wanted to avoid. They believed that that would not result in a democracy, but a mobocracy. And you're absolutely right to bring up France, because I talk about it in Rage in the Republic. Many of these new Jacobins are mouthing the same mantras of Mitterrand and all of his government. That, he came in with his socialist government and actually appointed a minister of leisure, because he was telling the French, you're going to need help with all of the leisure time we're going to give you. And, of course, the economy collapsed. He had to bring back capitalism at great cost. But the current young generation has no memory or experience with the collapse of those socialist governments in the 20th century. And so they are in record numbers embracing socialism and communism because of these sort of platitudes from people like Mondani, who are saying, I'm going to introduce you to the warmth of collectivism. It's almost ripped directly from the pages of Mitterrand.
So, yeah. Oh, God, Mondani. I can't. I was having a good day. Now you're talking about Mondani ruining New York. But but it's true. You got columnists, you got so-called pundits taking shots at the Constitution, the left in the United States taking shots at the Constitution. You think this? Look, you're a very, very smart guy. I think it will hold, though. I think the forces behind the Constitution who favor it will hold. I mean, I have to believe that, Jonathan. Otherwise, it's too depressing.
Well, I hope so, too. I'm an optimist. What I do know, and I say this in the book, is that we will not only survive the 21st century, even with robotics and AI challenges that we're going to face, the massive initial unemployment or job shift we're looking at, which is going to be unprecedented. We can survive all that if we hold tightly to this unique model of government that was created. We're going to need it more than ever. And if we do that, I'm very confident. I talked about Rage in the Republic in Prague And one of the EU members in the audience said, well, why are you so optimistic about your own government? How about the EU? And I said, I would bet against the EU. I think that you are unlikely to survive the 21st century, in my view, because you have torn up the very things that I identify in the book as essential to facing these challenges. And my concern is not that you're going to collapse, which I think you will, but you're going to collapse in spectacular fashion. And history shows that when you have this consolidation of power, what comes after it is often tyranny. That is, you create the conditions for Napoleon Bonaparte, a single leader rule.
You write, that's a good point, the single leader. The EU is, I would agree with you about the European Union. It was a lousy idea in the first place. And there's no constitution. What that is just a legalistic bureaucracy. But you talk about the importance of liberty to our founders, liberty. You say the focus of the American Revolution was liberty, not democracy. It was the first Enlightenment revolution grounded in natural rights held by all of humanity. The founders saw direct democracy as leading to what one of them called a mobocracy. I mean, that's a very interesting point. Literally, liberty, the importance of that gets you the economic Adam Smith, and it gets you to the different politics here.
No, I think that's the real thrust of the book, that people forget that the framers didn't want Athenian democracy. Athenian democracy was a colossal failure. It collapsed, and it led to tyranny. What the framers wanted was liberty. It's liberty that's mentioned in the Declaration of Independence, not democracy. And that's what the framers wanted to achieve. And what they saw soon after the creation of their own system was what happens when you don't have those precautions. And I write the book following the life of Thomas Paine to some extent, because he was one of only two figures that played a role in both the revolutions in the United States and in France. And Paine was not a great advocate of these precautions and limitations on democracy. And it damn near came close to killing him. I mean, he came within 24 hours of being guillotined. So he went to France and watched what happened. It did create a mobocracy. And what I say in the book about the new Jacobins today is I'm not saying that these people want to start, lobbing heads off. But I also remind people in the book, people like Robespierre were lawyers. Robespierre, when he started as a Jacobin, was espousing due process and the rights of man. So it corrupted him and the rest of the Jacobins.
Isn't that interesting? Of course, the lawyers. Oh, my God. Anyway, Jonathan Turley is a great lawyer. And the name of the book, folks, we've got to sell the book, The Rage and the Republic, the unfinished story of the American Revolution. It is out now. Get it on Amazon or wherever. Help out my friend Jonathan Turley. Sell lots and lots of books. Jonathan, have your publisher send me a copy of the book, because I'm a poor, starving Fox host. We can't afford all this high-priced literature, and I will read it forthwith. Thank you for coming on the show. We appreciate it, Jonathan Turley. Folks, we'll take a quick break, and Senator Rick Scott on the other side is going to tell us about the Save America Act and whether Chuck Schumer is going to reopen the border. I'm Kudlow. We'll be right back.
The Larry Kudlow Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Larry Kudlow Show. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Let's just dive right in. We're welcoming back to the show my friend Senator Rick Scott from the great state of Florida, one of the absolute best people in the U.S. Senate. And Senator Scott, I have, two questions.
That's very nice, Larry. Thank you.
Well, you're terrific. You are. You're one of the most, because of your business background, and you're a good governor of Florida, and I try to tout you wherever I can. You're a great role model. So let me just ask, Senator, Chuck Schumer and the Democrats want to end ICE, defund ICE, and go back to open borders. That's the way I see it. And so you all are arguing about the, remaining budget for Homeland Security. What's going to happen here? Is Schumer Democrats going to, get there? They want to end ICE. I mean, I think that's apparent.
Oh, yeah, they're going to win.
You think they are going to win?
I mean,
oh my gosh.
Yeah. I mean, it takes 60 votes. They've already said they don't, the Democrats don't want to fund ICE. So now the saving grace for ICE is that they had a lot of money directed to them in our big beautiful bill last summer, the Tax Cut and Jobs Act last summer. So that's the positive. But no, I don't think there's any chance that we're going to fund ICE this week. So that means FEMA will have no new money. TSA will be shut down. Coast Guard will get no money. But no, there's not much of a chance. They want to defang and defund ICE. They want to put all these restrictions to basically open the border. They don't want anybody deported. They don't care that they don't care about these criminals. Think about it. What do you say to Laken Riley's parents when you are a Democrat and you say, I don't care what happened to your daughter. That they want to they don't care at all. They don't care about Justin Mangari. They don't care about Rachel Marin. Your daughter was raped by an illegal immigrant that came under Biden. They don't care. That's what they're saying. They do not care.
I mean, I hear Schumer and other Democrats, but I'm listening to Schumer, who, is old enough and smart enough to know better, but he doesn't know better anymore. So he sounds a lot like, with Tim Walz in Minnesota or the mayor Fry. Yeah. I mean, they just hate ICE. ICE is the enemy. They want no masks. They want to be able to have IDs and dox them and their families, and Lord knows they want racial profiling special warrants so they could find judges to stop it. We have the same problem here in New York with this guy Mandami, the socialist. But so you're basically saying it's going to go on. This argument's going to go on.
Well, first off, we go back Monday, right?
Yep.
There's been no conversation in the Senate that we could pass, that we could get 60 votes for, because the Democrats are going to vote lockstep not to fund this. So, I mean, they don't, unless they defang and defund ICE, they will not allow, TSA will not get paid. Coast Guard will not get paid. No new money for FEMA. No money for Homeland Security. So I don't think there's any chance that this will be funded by Friday.
Wow. The other one, Senator Scott, is the Save America Act, which requires photo IDs and proof of citizenship in order to vote. I don't think that's asking too much. That is going to go back to the House. The House is likely to pass it. Will the Senate pass it? Will the Senate even touch it?
Well, first off, I want to thank the president. Ron Johnson, Michael Lee, and I went and sat down with the president for 2 hours on Thursday, and he is all in for election security. So he wants to make sure that you have to have you have to show an ID when you're going to go vote. You have to prove your citizenship if you want to go register to vote. So he wants to fix the problems of mail-in ballots. So, I mean, he knows that if we don't fix this stuff, why do we think we're going to win elections? These guys, Schumer wants fraud. He wants illegals here to vote illegally. I don't get to vote in France. I wouldn't vote for Macron. I don't get to vote in England. I wouldn't vote for Starmer. But he wants people like people from all over the world to come in here and elect Democrats. That's all he wants. So the president's all on board. The House, I think, will pass it, hopefully next week. And here's my belief. I don't think there's any chance we'll pass this with the Democrat vote. So the only way this is going to happen is if we either get rid of the filibuster or we use the talking filibuster, which means the filibuster is actually supposed to just stop debate, not stop a vote. So which means that if you want to keep talking. But when you guys are all finished talking, we are going to vote on this bill, and it only takes 50 votes.
Oh, I didn't know that. Run that by me again. There's a talking filibuster?
We can do a talking filibuster, which hasn't been done in a long time. But basically what it says is that, the way the filibuster was set up was this. It was never in the Senate. It took 60 votes to pass legislation. It took a certain number of votes to stop debate, because early on you could keep talking as long as you wanted. Then they reduced it, I think, to 80%. Then they reduced it to 2/3. Now it's at 60. So the filibuster was always to stop debate. So you can, by our rules, and it'll be hard. It'll take a lot of time. But by our rules, we can force the Democrats to talk. When they're finished talking, we will vote, and we'll pass it with 50 votes plus J.D. Vance or 51 Republican votes. We have to do it. Otherwise, why? We are in the majority. We need to act like we're in the majority. We need to get these things done.
So I didn't. Well, that's a good thing. Senator Thune in favor of the Save America Act?
He's absolutely in favor of it.
Yeah.
I mean, he wants to make sure that we're working through how do we do the talking filibuster. So there's a lot of mechanics to it. But here's why it's going to happen. The president's on board. The president's on board. He knows this is an existential threat to our republic. If we don't start having voter ID and stop these illegals from voting and playing games in our election, then why do we think we're going to continue to win? Democrats want fraud. If you look at why don't they want voter ID? By the way, Democrat voters want voter ID. Okay, Republican voters want voter ID. Independent voters want voter ID. But guess what? The Democrat elected don't want it because they know they wouldn't win the election.
It takes, by the way, it took a vote. It took an ID card to get into the Democratic National Convention. And in the House, you can't vote unless you have a photo ID. Even no Democrats.
Democrats require photo ID for coming to their campaign events. Not to vote, just for our campaign events.
Senator Rick Scott, the best of the best, sir. Honest to God, that is terrific stuff. But I got to talk the talking filibuster. That's that. Anyway, thank you for your time. We really appreciate it, folks. We'll take a break, and then we're going to go back to Dow 50,000 in the stock market. Okay, what can we expect? I'm Kudlow, and we will be back. Stay with us, please.
The Larry Kudlow Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Larry Kudlow Show. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back, folks. I'm Larry Kudlow. This is the Larry Kudlow Show. Hour 3, terrific stuff. You can live stream us on the Internet. How about those apples? Live stream us on the Internet, LarryKudlowShow.com, LarryKudlowShow.com. You can hear us all across the country, around the world, throughout the solar system, including the Milky Way. And please visit us, Fabulous Fox Business. Fabulous Fox Business. Monday through Friday, 4 to 5 p.m. Name of the show is Kudlow. And if for some reason you can't get there at 4, why, just text your favorite 9-year-old, and she will show you how to DVR the show. You'll never miss a thing. In fact, I'm interviewing President Trump, which I'm going down to the White House to play on Tuesday. So that'll be very interesting. I'm looking forward to it. Anyway, I'm looking forward to Dow 50,000. Here we are. And what a glorious thing, Dow 50,000. Everything went up yesterday, 2.5%, pretty much across the board. And I know the NASDAQ is maybe still recovering from its techie sell-off. And maybe we'll continue. I mean, you got the market widening. It's not just tech. Consumer staples for the week up 6%. Industrials up 4.7%. Materials up 3.5%. So it's not just tech. Anyway, we got two smart people to talk about this story. Nancy Tengler is the CEO and Chief Investment Officer of Laffer Tengler Investments. She's got a book out there, The Women's Guide to Successful Investing. And John Najarian, co-founder of Market Rebellion. So let's just start by getting a little bit of an overview. Nancy Tengler, start with you. Dow 50,000, and the rest of it, what do you make of it?
Well, somebody famous and very humble once said, earnings are the mother's milk of stock prices. Or maybe not so humble. And we are seeing earnings growth mid double digits, so 13 to 15% are the projections. I mean, we've seen a tremendous number in the companies we own of what we call the triple play, beat, and raise, and yet the stocks were punished. And so I think that's one of those opportunities. This feels very deep-seeky to me. We were in buying a number of those names, during the period from DeepSeek to Liberation Day. And like, if you just looked at names like Advanced Micro, it was down 10.5% then, and then it ended up from Liberation Day up 108%. Or Broadcom down 15, up 102. Coherent down 17, up 173. So these are times when you want to take advantage, if you believe in the narrative, which we do, that productivity-driven growth is going to continue, and we're just getting started, because these are transformative technologies that I think will change the way we live into the next decade. So we've been very focused on space, robotics, not just AI, nuclear and quantum, in addition. And that, I think, is what will drive excess total return going forward. So I'm not always optimistic. I was pretty pessimistic going into 2020, not because I knew about COVID, but we couldn't find any attractive names to buy. We're pretty optimistic, because we're finding all sorts of companies. We've been broadening out the portfolio for a number of months into industrials and consumer discretionary, as well as materials. And so we like those ISM numbers. I'd love to know what John thinks. They looked pretty exciting to me. We started to see improvements in the previous 2 months and in production, and then it bubbled up to the total manufacturing number moving expansionary last month. So I don't think there's a lot to hate. There's always a wall of worry, but we think the underlying fundamentals are really powerful.
I keep saying it, Nancy and John. I said it on the air yesterday. We went long in our first segment. Profits are the mother's milk of stocks. They're also the lifeblood of the economy, for that matter. But you've got a very small calculation. Wages minus productivity equals unit labor costs. Unit labor costs, because of the product, wages are going up, but the workforce is earning it because they're very productive. Productivity is rising rapidly. And unit labor costs, which is the ultimate cost, okay? And in some sense, it's the inflation rate for the whole economy. But it's the ultimate cost for companies. It's 1.1% last 4 quarters. That's all it is. But I keep saying this profit story. So look in the Wall Street Journal this morning. The Wall Street Journal, the great newspaper, business newspaper, etc. They have a bunch of articles about the Dow 50,000. Articles are uniformly pessimistic and never mention profits or earnings. Okay, I call them profits, but they don't go through it. I'm look at start on the front page and then turn to the break, and then it's unbelievable to me. No one talks about profits, John and John. I mean, I was just going to say,
wasn't it Besson who called them a bunch of grumpy old men at the Wall Street Journal?
Well, they unfortunately.
Sorry, John.
But I mean,
that's all right.
I mean, you just cannot look at the stock market without looking at profits, or as they're called, earnings. And let me give John one credit, though, very important credit. Ed Yardeni, okay. I had him on the air. I mean, he's not some Trump Republican either, but he's just a good economist who understands economic growth, but he writes about profits all the time. I had him on the TV show. We talked about profits. He's the only one. Ed Hyman does profits too, but no one does them like Yardeni. And that's the key point. And Nancy's right. You're in if you look at future earnings estimates from the street, you're in mid-teens. Okay, so that's pretty damn good, John Najarian.
Oh yeah, it is, and I agree with Nancy. That ISM this past week for January, 52.6, folks. They were looking for basically 48.5. It was 47 and 0.8 or 0.9 in December. So this was a blowaway number. This was great. And that's the manufacturing sector. That's people that are working in America. So as Larry said, profits of mother's milk of capitalism and so forth. Certainly seeing manufacturing, Larry, coming back the way it has is amazing. I mean, these are some of the strongest numbers we've seen since 22. And of course, that was coming out of a shutdown. So I think Nancy's exactly right. That was a very positive sign this week.
John,
some of these Go ahead. Sorry.
And I just want to add one thing.
Mm-hmm.
The ISM surveys, it's not what they used to be. A lot of the stuff, it was a great number, important number too. But a lot of their stuff is overseas. And it's included. They don't make a division between what's going on in America and what's going on overseas. The S&P 5, what is it? The S&P Global, blah, 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 whatever that thing is called. They also have their own version of the ISM, and they've been showing much stronger manufacturing for months. I just want to insert that because the ISMs are not. And the other thing is consumer confidence helped. The number helped up 3 months in a row and the highest in 6 months. Now, that Michigan survey, it's a lousy survey, but everybody looks at it. It's Democrats rule that survey, okay? It's like a poll. It's like a bad poll. But even the Democrats in that survey are coming around to more positive. Please continue, but I wanted to insert that.
Sure. Well, and your insight is always welcome and appreciated.
Don't listen.
I can't believe I'm on with the guy that's going to be talking with the president in a few days, and as well as Nancy. It's an honor to be on with both of you. But I think what we've seen is the moves in, for instance, the fear index. It shot all the way up to 22, almost 23 this past week. It came down fast yesterday. That 2% rally that Nancy and Larry were talking about, folks, that took the fear gauge back under 18 again. And that's definitely what we would like to see. That's the reaction you want to see if you were saying, boy, that certainly seemed like we had a flush in the market on Thursday. And clearly we did. Is it over? Could we see more downside from time to time? Yes, but not if we're seeing the kind of earnings that Larry's talking about, not if we don't see liquidations in gold and silver and Bitcoin to the same extent that we did see them. Some of that tied perhaps, or at least your favorite, the Wall Street Journal cited, I think, Kevin Warsh as one of the catalysts for that, Larry, when the president made that nomination. But I think this is going to be a great time to be in stocks. I think that shaking out some of the folks in AI in particular and some of the software stocks outside of that was something that was needed. You know, Michael Burry had been calling for that since October, and then we finally got it in the last little bit. And that takes us back down to a value level rather than an overbought fear of missing out level.
What is it? Axios. Oh my God! Why am I reading Axios? I know it gets into my mailbox. Axios is, of course, they're pessimistic. It's a lefty website, but they've got this thing here: robots eat software, and they're saying that's why Microsoft has lost $280 billion net worth, Oracle $61 billion, Palantir $36 billion, AppLovin, Salesforce, Intuit. What does that mean? Robots eat software. That means the AI stocks are eating up the software stocks? I don't understand that.
Yeah, I think to a certain extent, yes. I mean, there's an awful lot of people that are sort of at my level of programming, which is absolute novice. But you can go over to Claude or any number of other websites, and all of a sudden it's programming for you. So do you need a whole bunch of software engineers that you're paying $200,000 and so forth for? No. I mean, do you need some? Yes. Do you need the numbers that they've had to have in the past at Meta and even at Amazon and Microsoft and Apple? No, you don't. It's just going to be one of those situations where, you know, it's Elon's world and we just live in it when they start rolling out. I mean, you know, when you shut down the Model X and the Model S and you turn those production lines into Optimus, the, of course, unbelievable robots that he is building, when you do that, you're talking about millions of those robots rolling out. And they are going to do some but again, the profitability of these companies is going to go through the roof. And I don't mean Tesla. That's going to do just fine. But I mean anybody who's able to reduce headcount and thus some of that spend for employees, not just CapEx, is going to just be, it's manna from heaven, Larry.
All right, I got to take a break. I want Elon to come back and do Doge 2.0. We got a lot of waste, fraud, and abuse in the government that he didn't get to. He only got to a small percentage of it. Anyway, I want to pursue this, but we got Nancy Tengler and we got John Najarian, and I got to take a break here, and we'll be right back with more on stocks. Folks.
The Larry Kudlow Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Larry Kudlow Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Talking stocks, Nancy Tengler, CEO and CIO of Laffer Tengler Investments, John Najarian, co-founder of Market Rebellion. We had so much fun in the first segment. We only have 4 minutes in the second segment. But I want to ask, so Nancy, start with you. I mean, so if robots are eating software, does that mean you don't buy Microsoft? You don't buy Oracle? I mean, really? Is that what's going to happen here?
Well, that's why I think this is kind of like DeepSeek, Larry, where everyone said, the Chinese are building inferencing models for $6 million and we're spending billions. And it turned out that was a lie. But you got the sell-off. I think there will be companies that will be compromised. We exited Adobe and Salesforce a while ago on concerns, but we added to Microsoft on Thursday. We think there are survivors. I think you have to be picky. But what's interesting to me, too, is that, we're getting all this feedback on CapEx spending, which used to be good when I was a kid. Companies were investing in CapEx. Yeah. But, that same Wall Street Journal that was so pessimistic on the front page had an article on the second page this morning about Amazon, and it was kind of an accusation, like they're paying less income tax.
Right.
Their income taxes went down 50%, greater than 50%, thanks to the One Big Beautiful Bill Act. That's why these companies are spending. It will be stimulative for the economy, and the losers will shake out. But I don't think software companies like Microsoft and some of the other biggies are going away.
That was that's another article that I want to rail against, because you're right. First of all, they're spending a fortune on capital. It's called capital deepening, right? Machinery, equipment, technology, right. R&D, and so forth. They're using the 100% immediate expensing in the One Big Beautiful Bill, which is fantastic, which means not only will they have the greatest technology available, but they will also have plenty of money to give raises to their workforce, their wage earners, and they'll give them the best equipment possible. And it's fabulous. And that article was attacking them because it was like a left-wing article. Oh, you didn't pay enough in taxes. I mean, this is the Wall Street Journal. All right, honest to God,
the old man.
it just boggles my mind. Okay.
Yeah. Me too.
Well, so John Najarian, give me, what do you like here? What would give me something interesting?
Well, just as you guys were both discussing, I mean, public software multiples are at multi-decade lows right now, guys.
Oh.
I mean, median revenue is like 3.6. That's the lowest in 10 years. If you look at stocks like ServiceNow, symbol NOW, I own that. Shopify, I just bought that, SHOP. Twilio, I'm looking to get into that, TWLO. A lot of these, I think, have significant upsides after some of these compressions that we've seen. Oracle, too. I mean, what Oracle said last August still applies. I mean, they have a huge AI backlog that's going to be paying dividends for shareholders for years, Larry.
I love this. Yeah. Look, the two ones at Axios, Oracle and Microsoft, because it's Axios, it tells me go out and buy them. Just go out and buy them. If the left doesn't like them, buy them. If the Wall Street Journal doesn't like profits, sell them. And it's crazy. The world is turning upside down. You guys are wonderful. Nancy Tengler, thank you. John Najarian, thank you. Folks, stick around. We're going to do some money in politics with Liz Peek and Steve Moore. I'm Kudlow. We're going to talk about Bad Bunny. Bad Bunny is a bad bunny.
The Larry Kudlow Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Larry Kudlow Show, entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
Welcome back, folks. So we're going to do some money in politics. We got Liz Peek, Fox News contributor, syndicated columnist Steve Moore, Unleashed Prosperity Hotline, WABC radio host of More Money, which comes right after this show on most of these same radio stations. All right, kids. Liz Peek, I guess I got to go to you first. The Super Bowl's coming Sunday. Bad Bunny. Bad Bunny's playing in the halftime show. Bad Bunny. They do not like Donald Trump. But Turning Point USA is going to run its own halftime show with Kid Rock, who does like Trump and plays much nicer music. Who are you going to watch, Bad Bunny or Kid Rock? Big question.
Oh, Larry, what a shame that this, iconic event in all Americans' lives has become politicized like this. I just think shame on the NFL for creating a moment which we should all enjoy, which we should all be celebrating, and instead we're running to our respective corners, as always, to make a political point. I think it's a shame. I think Bad Bunny was a bad choice, partly because this is America being looked at around the world. Okay, there are a lot of Hispanic and Spanish-speaking people around the world, but this is the United States, and that is not our official language. I object to Bad Bunny, not, frankly, because of his politics. I can't even think of a rock star whose politics, other than Kid Rock, I might enjoy, or Nicki Minaj, but because he sings in Spanish, and he isn't going to make any effort to reach the people in America, the United States, who don't speak Spanish. That's wrong. I think it's very bad for Spanish-speaking people in the United States. I could really I've been writing about this for 20 years. Not encouraging Hispanics in the United States to learn to speak English is relegating them to second-class citizen status, and I think celebrating that at the Super Bowl is preposterous.
Is Bad Bunny, are there songs in Latin or in Spanish?
They're all Spanish. It's all going to be in Spanish.
Yeah, that's terrific. Yeah. Right. So we don't want to speak English. We want to speak Spanish. Oh, wait a second. Exactly. This is America. I forgot about that. Steve Moore, they're going to stream it. Turning Point USA is going to stream it on their website so you can listen to Kid Rock, who's terrific. I saw him on Fox and Friends. I ran some tape on it in our show. He's terrific, Kid Rock.
Yeah, I kind of wish it was Nicki Minaj who was.
Oh,
because that little routine she did with Scott Bessent. I don't know if you saw it, Larry.
Yeah,
in the Treasury was priceless.
Uh-huh.
And who knew? On top of Scott Bessent's all of his other talents, he would be such a good dancer. Listen, really, what this is all about is the absolute collapse of music in America. I mean, we all grew up in the '60s and '70s when there was incredible music, the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, the Who, the Beach Boys. Name one artist, literally one artist today that could come anywhere close to the music that they wrote. I was with my kids and they were playing, what's it, Bad Bunny? We were at home and they put this record on. And I'm like, this is the worst thing I've ever listened to.
It's crap.
What is this?
It is crap. It's garbage.
They go, oh, this is Bad Bunny. I'm like, who the hell is Bad Bunny? I mean, why is it? No, seriously, why is it that nobody can write good music anymore? It's unbelievable.
Have you ever?
You know who is writing good music, Steve? AI. Did you know that about 2 months ago, this is true, the number one country music song, song was written by AI. Totally.
Are you? Really?
Yeah.
I didn't know
this was back in the fall, and I can't even tell you what the name of it was, but it was pretty good. And yikes. I mean, that's a little bit scary, right?
Where's Louis Armstrong?
That's my point about the Grammys, because, the Grammys was last week. And look, they always have, it was especially bad with the politics. But there wasn't one good song played in the whole 2 hours. Amazing.
We play, on this show, we play Louis Armstrong.
There you go.
We play Frank Sinatra. We play Nat King Cole.
Exactly.
Throw some Ella Fitzgerald in. That's how we come in and out of our segments. But it's bad enough that Bad Bunny's music is bad. But now he has to spend his time attacking Trump, okay? That's part of it. And Trump, by the way, it's probably stupid because Trump does very well with Hispanic voters. Very well. And continues to do very well with Hispanic voters. So it's wrong. But now, here's one good thing. There's going to be an ad for the Trump savings account, Steve Moore.
Yay.
Now, this is really important. This is a game changer. Every single day on the show this past week, I've talked about Trump accounts. This is a game changer. You can take people who come from poor backgrounds, you give them put this stuff into the stock market. You see it's Dow 50,000 celebrating it. They can go from poverty to millionaires. They can own from welfare to wealth creation. I mean, this is how important this is. So ads for the Trump accounts is a good thing in the Super Bowl.
Well, who's sponsoring them? Who's paying for the ads?
I don't know.
I'm glad to
somebody.
Hear it.
Yeah,
I mean,
I'm not sure.
Look, we had obviously the red letter day for the stock market yesterday, Dow 50,000, and when the three of us got I don't know, we were maybe about the same age, but when we got first involved in this stuff, the Dow was at 1,000.
That's right.
Around
That's
81,
right.
82.
So
that's a pretty amazing thing, and I do think the thing that really unleashed this bull market, the thing that was the match that lit the fire, and you were there, Larry, was the Reagan tax cuts.
Yep.
And the defeating of inflation in the early 80s. And so I agree with everything I said. I think one of the real tragedies, and I'm going to do a shout out for George W. Bush, who argued 20 years ago we should allow all the Social Security money to be put in personal accounts. And if we had done that, every single American today would be a pension millionaire. And all these people, your friend Paul Krugman, it's too risky to put the money in the market. What a tragedy.
He got his brains beaten in for it, and he was on the right track. He got his brains beaten in for it.
Exactly.
And I talked to him about it several times. He was very, just on that, this is a little sidebar. Don't forget, Bushy, cut the dividends tax, cut the capital gains tax, cut the top income tax rate, right? He was a real supply side president. Okay, he walked into the whole collapse of the mortgage market, and I think that was too bad. But he had done some good stuff. But Liz, I want to come back to these savings accounts because I think they need to be, pushed by the White House, sold. You get $1,000, but families can add to it every year. Employers can add to it every year. And when you look at the tables, Steve ran the tables. The 10%, which is about right for the last 100 years, according to Jeremy Siegel's Stocks for the Long Run. 10% compounded will make these folks millionaires. I mean, it's an unbelievable story.
It is, and I think you're right. The White House really needs to hammer this home, and in a broader context, too, which is not just that young kids can end up with some significant money, but in an era when everyone's worried about jobs and AI and how that's going to displace the earning power of some categories of people like college graduates, here's a way to kind of counteract that. And the educational aspect of it is gigantic.
Yes.
I mean, kids graduate from high school not having a clue about what a bank account looks like or how you buy stock or, for that matter, how you can achieve middle-class jobs. I mean, it really is appalling how our kids are being not educated. And this is really a very good step forward.
It sure is. I mean, that's big. With I like that the Dow 50,000 really coincides with the Trump savings accounts.
Right.
You know what I mean? Dave Asman said this on the show last night, and he's right. It sort of adds a little glitter and glow to the possibilities of this story because everybody on the left loves to badmouth the stock market. Do not invest in the. You're right, Paul Krugman, but lots of people do. The front page, the Wall Street Journal stories today, they're all pessimistic stories about the market. Yeah. Nobody talks about profits or productivity. I mean, it's one after another. I don't know what has happened to that newspaper, but whatever. Dow 50,000, markets work, and you'll learn a little bit about how businesses work, right? These kids, if you own these accounts, they're like, and they'll keep score. It's like basketball. They'll keep score. Hey, my thing, it's endlessly positive. And it may be one of Trump's best things. Yeah. Maybe one of his best things. I think it's great.
And you know what? Kids also then have a vested interest in the success of the country. I mean, the stock market is
I love
better
that.
or worse.
I love that.
the stock market is kind of it's a report card on how well our country is doing, and when the stock market does well, the country is always doing well.
It is.
Exactly.
It's a pretty good. You're right. You're 100% right. What does it mean for the midterm? As soon as Karl Rove writes a thing about how bad the economy is, we go here. Republicans have an economy problem. Karl Rove in his column yesterday or the day before, they have an economy problem. Let me get this right. GDP 4 to 5% growth, wages rising faster than inflation. Dow 50,000. Grover Norquist, Grover says 135 million people are in the market. So really, so GOP has an economy problem? I don't get that.
Yeah. I want to do a shout out for all the companies, by the way, that have also put money in these accounts. And Michael Dell, with his amazing philanthropic, what a great way to contribute to America to put, I think, what was it, $5 billion?
$6.5 billion. $6.5 billion. Yeah, and really, remarkable.
If you really want to help people, help young people. If you care about the children, maybe donate some money to these accounts, and then you're talking about some real money for folks. And by the way, when you talk about becoming millionaires, they'll be millionaires by the time they're 35 years old.
Mm-hmm.
By the time they're 65 years old, they're going to have $5 million in these accounts. If the next 40 years is anything like the past 40 years. In fact, I said at Fox News yesterday, if the next 40 years are as good as the last 40 years, we'll be talking about Dow 1 million.
Yeah.
Dow 1 million. Wow.
Is that how it multiplies out?
Yeah, because when
you do it at 10%?
The market's grown 30-fold or something like that since. So it might be even higher than that. So, this is the power of compound interest.
Liz, to come back to your point, that the late Jude Wanniski, supply side writer, journalist. I don't know if you remember him or not, but
The Way the World Works.
That's right, The Way the World. It was a good book. It was kind of a crazy guy, but it was a good book, and he had interesting insights. But anyway, he used to always argue that the stock market was the barometer for the health and wealth of the country. Just to come back to your point earlier.
Yeah.
And I think it's important. I think it's very important. And I don't know who's going to win the midterm elections. Nobody knows. This is February. The election's in November. But I just think people who are saying how bad things are, maybe because they blame Trump, I don't know. But they are. The stock market at Dow 50,000 is telling you that we are in good shape in this country.
Yeah. I agree. But, Larry, just think about it. Who benefits from things not looking good right now? Obviously, the Democrats. So all of the media that's kind of left-leaning. Right. And I've said this. I know this is truly a dog bites man story. But guess what? The media is really constantly engaged and painting as bad a picture as they can. And the bad news is, it does affect people's mood. It affects people's spending when consumer sentiment plummets because, oh, my gosh, this is going wrong and AI is going to take your job and, all these horrible things are about to happen from tariffs and everything. Guess what? They do pull back on their spending. It really is. It's really, really unfair to the country to kind of have this 100% negativity out there all the time. And thank heavens that you and Steve and others are telling a different story because and the great thing about the stock market is it's not like a poll. You don't have to write any kind of rules or regulations about it. It's impartial. It's made up of millions of people voting with their feet and their pocketbooks, and you have to believe it.
I know. I like that very much. It's a great barometer. I just think it's terrific stuff. All right, I got to take a break. We're talking to Liz Peek, Fox News, and Steve Moore's radio show's coming up right after this show on most of these same stations. I'm Kudlow. We'll be right back.
The Larry Kudlow Show on the Red Apple Podcast Network. The Larry Kudlow Show. Entertaining and informative on the Red Apple Podcast Network.
I've completely lost control of my own show. The producers are in open revolt. They're dancing on the other side of the glass thing. I can't. It's unbelievable what goes on here. Bad Bunny. Bad Bunny.
You're going to have to talk to John Catsimatidis about that.
I am going to have to file a complaint. Maybe I can take it to the Supreme Court. Steve, to answer your question about the advertising the Trump accounts, it's an outfit called Invest America, a nonprofit advocacy organization.
I like that.
Invest America, blah, blah, blah. Can I ask you, though, both of you, what do you think about the Trump RX website? He launched that this week, the drastic discounts on prescriptions, et cetera, et cetera. Is this a good thing, Steve Moore?
There are some really good elements to it. There's too many middlemen in you should be able to buy drugs directly from your doctor and cut out the pharmacies and the PBMs and all that. And that would probably cut costs of pharmaceutical prescription drugs. And so I like it. The only thing I do not like, Larry, is I don't like the price controls. I really think that we have been dominant for, 40 years, 50 years in the invention of incredible new drugs. I think, like, if you look at the 40 wonder drugs of the last 50 years, I think 35 of them have come from American pharmaceutical companies, and we want to continue to dominate that. But price controls will slow the race for the cure.
This is the most favored nations thing.
Yeah, I'm not wild about that.
Yeah, drug prices are reduced by negotiating most favored nations deals with 14 major pharmaceutical companies. So whatever it is in France, which is a socialist system, or England, which is a socialist system, we have to do it here. I don't know, Liz Peek. Can
I just add one other quick thing on this, which is that what I do want Trump to do, and which he's done a pretty good job of so far, is negotiating with these other countries to so they can't undercut American pharmaceutical. In other words, why should the people in France pay less for these drugs than we pay in the United States? That's not fair.
Right.
And Trump's been very good on that.
That, by the way, is a very, very unpopular reality. People don't like the fact that they are subsidizing people in England or France or Canada or whatever by paying exorbitant prices for drugs. I thought this website, and I haven't gone on it, embarrassingly, but I thought it was all about transparency, that you were able to compare prices on various drugs across makers, across sources. Is that not right? Because I thought that was a great idea.
I don't know.
I'm all for that. I'm all for that.
Yeah, no, I like I like what you just said. I don't know. I haven't been on the website either.
Also, I saw that Amazon is hiring a gazillion pharmaceutical people. I don't know if you guys saw that.
No.
I've always thought that Amazon eventually was going to roll out and become a major player in lowering healthcare costs by making medicines cheaper and more easily available and so forth. I mean, there are really so many things wrong with our healthcare system, including too many middlemen, but also not everything has to be so complicated. So make it easier. Make it easier to go online and order your drugs. And again, I think the transparency aspect of that is enormous.
Have we reached the point where talk about transparency? And Art Laffer is very, very keen on transparency. Right. It's a crusade of his, and he's right. But with respect to doctors, hospitals, operations, things of that sort, do we know what the price menu is? Have we come to that point yet?
Well, you were
don't you?
You were involved, Larry, in the first term, and Arthur is one of the people who got Trump to sign that executive order about price transparency. So what's happened 5 years later or so is the hospitals and the doctors and the pharmaceutical companies have not been complying with it, and they're just ignoring the executive order. And so my idea, by the way, is no price, no pay. If you don't tell me what it costs, it's free.
How much is a hip replacement? How much is a knee replacement? That kind of stuff.
But Larry and Steve, what they do is they'll give you pricing, and it's so convoluted and complicated. It's like 40 different elements to a hip replacement. Right. They don't say, it's going to cost $60,000. I don't have no idea what a hip replacement costs, but they do not make it easy. They don't want to make it easy.
It's about $20,000.
Yeah,
I've had a couple.
Thanks for listening to The Larry Kudlow Show. You can hear The Larry Kudlow Show Saturday mornings at 10. If you like the podcast, share it with your friends, and listen anytime at WABCRadio.com and download the WABC Radio app. Hit that subscribe button on all major podcast platforms. Plus, follow WABC on social, on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, and X. See you next time for a new episode, so you never have to wonder.
What the heck is going on here?